Elijah Moore is gone. Mecole Hardman is a Jet. Is this a good thing for the Jets? Well, it depends, and I'll explain why on today's episode of the Locked On Jets podcast.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Wednesday, March 22nd, 2023, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you for making the show your first listen or first watch every day. This podcast is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. If you like what you see or hear, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you're listening on a podcast source and enjoy the show, please give it a 5-star review. It helps the channel out and helps other Jets fans find Locked On Jets. So just giving this episode a big thumbs up if you are watching on YouTube. And today our episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Have you ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code LOCKEDON, all caps, in the game. Well, yesterday, I asked whether Aaron Rodgers could help save Elijah Moore's career with the New York Jets. And today we got a resounding answer to that question, and the answer is no, as the Jets worked out a trade with the Cleveland Browns, sending the former second-round pick Elijah Moore to Cleveland, along with the Jets' third-round pick. So the Jets send Elijah Moore and pick number 74 to Cleveland. In exchange, they get the Browns' second-round pick, so they get pick 42. So Elijah Moore and a third-round pick for a second-round pick. So essentially the Jets move up one round by trading Elijah Moore to the Cleveland Browns. What does this mean for the franchise? Is this a good move? Is it not? You know, I could have gone either way on Elijah Moore. I think if you listened to yesterday's show, I wasn't really sure what the Jets were going to get out of him. You always like to believe in a young player. You like to buy into the good things, but there were also a lot of bad things. And this second season Elijah Moore had was, frankly, it was a disaster. I mean, he entered the season with such sky-high expectations. The Jets, I think, were hoping that he'd become at least a 1,000-yard receiver. And not only did he not become a 1,000-yard receiver, he became a headache for them. You know, he demanded that trade after the game against the Packers before the Jets played the Broncos. He demanded the trade after a game the Jets won. It was one of their biggest wins in years. And yet he was out there creating negative headlines. And it was a few days later. I mean, he started right after the game, and it just continued through the week. I remember I said at the time, and this is back in October, that the Jets really they were not in the position to be able to trade Elijah Moore in October, but things might be very different in the offseason, because in October, the Jets really had no mechanism by which to replace him. Now in the offseason, you do. In the offseason, there are a lot of players available. Especially when you get close to the trading deadline in season, it's tough to find a replacement if you have to get rid of a player or if somebody gets hurt. That's not the case now, and I think one of the things the Jets needed to decide was whether Elijah Moore was all in or if he wasn't. And it seems like the Jets have decided Elijah Moore was not all in, that they had to move on from him. And I can't help but think through the years, especially recent years, the Jets have had such a rough draft history, especially as of late. And I think about all the players they could have moved on from maybe a year early. Players who retained value, but because the Jets held on to them for so long, they essentially lost all their value. And in a way, I feel like maybe this is a good thing. It's not a good thing. Like, it's a bad day for the franchise. I think whenever you're giving up on a second-round pick after 2 years and taking negative value for him, because the Jets used a high second-round pick on Elijah Moore. Now they're getting back a high second-round pick, but they also have to send a third-round pick out, and that's of course natural. I mean, a failed second-round pick is not going to retain his value after 2 years. He's got 2 years left of a cheap contract, and he's got a track record of not playing so well in the NFL, but. If you look at this, I mean, it's not a good day for the Jets from that standpoint. I think there's no way you can look at this as anything other than a bad day for the Jets, because they essentially have to move on from a high second-round pick, a guy who had such sky-high expectations. I mean, at the moment the Jets made that pick, there was like nothing but praise for it from people who followed the draft, people in the NFL. And you may remember, that first training camp Elijah Moore was a member of the New York Jets. I mean, all the talk was about how he was dominating training camp, and then he got injured and got off to a slow start, but showed a few flashes. And by the end of that first year, there was hope that he could turn those flashes into something more consistent. However, as I said yesterday, flashes are flashes. Good for a rookie is different from being a great player overall. Elijah Moore's 2021, it was good for a rookie while he was healthy. Of course, he missed the end of the season. But it doesn't, if you don't translate that into year two, and if you don't make a big leap forward in year two, it's a red flag. And Elijah Moore did not just fail to take a leap forward. I thought he regressed in year two. He just was not a very good player for the Jets. Wasn't the same guy. And, maybe it was he came in, maybe he added too much bulk over the course of the offseason. He did not look explosive. And we know that, he was not engaged through the course of the season. I think one of the frustrating things is as the team was winning games, that's when the complaints happened. I mean, it's one thing when your locker room's falling apart when you're losing. I mean, I think there are moments where frustration seeps over and maybe people are not themselves. But when you're winning games and you're complaining because you're not getting the ball enough, that's something that's troubling. And not only is that troubling, it's when you're a guy like Elijah Moore who's really not proven himself in the NFL. it's not like this is a guy with a track record of multiple Pro Bowls, multiple All-Pro teams. I think it left a bad note. I think everybody went away feeling really negative about Elijah Moore from that moment, and the Jets decide to move on. And I think, if you look at the trade package they got, it's a reasonable package. If you look at the old trade value chart, which if you're a longtime listener, I'm not a big fan of the trade value chart. I don't think it does a great job of accurately quantifying how much draft picks are worth, but it's what teams tend to go by. So if you look at what the Jets gave up versus what they got, the difference is about a third-round pick. So essentially, I guess by the way the NFL values picks, again, not the way I think they should value it, not necessarily an accurate gauge of how valuable these picks really are, but by the way the NFL values it, it seems like the Jets got a third-round pick in return, which obviously is lower than what they gave for what they used to take Elijah Moore, because they used an early second-round pick to draft Elijah Moore back in 2021, but they at least did recoup a third-round pick. So this is very much a case of cutting your losses for the Jets. Obviously not a good day. And you can't help but think back to after the 2021 draft, which was only 23 months ago. I mean, it was less than 2 calendar years ago. How many of us thought that, the Jets had found their quarterback to receiver connection of the future in Zach Wilson to Elijah Moore? And at that point, we thought Mekhi Becton was going to be the left tackle blocking for Zach Wilson over the course of the next decade. And now none of these guys are really part of the mix for the Jets going forward. It shows you that, and I guess it's another sign that this Joe Douglas era, not going as well as we thought it would, not going as well as we hoped it would. And this is, I don't think there's any other way to put it. This is a failure for the Jets. The fact that we're now after 2 years. I mean, if you had told somebody 12 months ago, if you told somebody a year ago, let's forget about 2 years ago. If you told somebody 1 year ago, the Jets would be trading Elijah Moore and a day 2 pick just to move up on day 2 of the draft, nobody would believe you. I mean, you would have been called the most negative person in the world. Yet here we are. So, I think it's on one sense, it's good that the Jets, they cut their losses. They decided to move on. They did not keep more on theoretical potential until he lost all value. But in a bigger sense, it's obviously a disappointing day because it's a reminder that the Jets, failed with another second-round pick. And unfortunately for the Jets, second round has been kind of a tortured spot for this franchise, with a few exceptions like Breece Hall last year. Now, ahead here on the Locked On Jets podcast, the Jets were not done at wide receiver. They actually made a move. They brought in a receiver from the Kansas City Chiefs. Not a guy who necessarily made a big difference for the Chiefs, but a guy who could step into the lineup. Is bringing in Mecole Hardman a good move? Well, I think it depends a little bit on what role they have envisioned for him, and I'll explain what I mean as we continue on this Wednesday episode of the Locked On Jets podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Of course, we're talking NFL offseasons today. We're talking Elijah Moore. We're talking Mecole Hardman. There are no NFL games until September. But the tournament is heating up now, and that makes it the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000. So that's bonus bets back if your first bet does not win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss your chance to get your no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. This is the Locked On Jets podcast here on this Wednesday. We did not get to do our mailbag show today because the Jets made some news. We'll try and get our mailbag show done tomorrow, so still have time to send in your mailbag questions for this week. But, of course, the Jets have traded Elijah Moore and a third-round pick to the Cleveland Browns for a second-round pick. There was a corresponding move, and you have to think that on some level these moves were related because right before the Jets traded Elijah Moore to the Cleveland Browns, news broke that the Jets had agreed to terms with Kansas City Chiefs receiver Mecole Hardman on a contract worth approximately $6.5 million, or at least if he hits incentives, that's how much he could make. Now, Hardman's kind of an interesting story. There was buzz back in 2019 that there were elements of the Jets front office who really liked Hardman when he was a wide receiver coming out of Georgia. And there was even some buzz that there were some members who wanted to trade up for him. He ended up going to the Kansas City Chiefs. And, this was a guy very fast, 4.3 type speed. And the thought at the time was that Kansas City viewed him as kind of the next Tyreek Hill. And he never quite made it. He's not, he belongs in the NFL. This is not a guy who should be out of the NFL after 4 years. But this is not a guy who really ever delivered on the promise, on the hype that he got coming out of school. In fact, he's never even had a 700-yard season in 4 years in the NFL. And this is a guy who has spent his entire career with the Kansas City Chiefs. His entire career, Patrick Mahomes has been his quarterback. Andy Reid has been his head coach. And this is a guy who's yet to have 700. And I understand, you could say he played with Hill the first couple of years. Travis Kelce, well, he still wasn't, though he missed some time in 2022, still wasn't that much more productive. Now, one thing he does bring to the table is, he's a returner. In his first year, he was actually second-team All-Pro. He made the Pro Bowl as a return man, so maybe he brings that element to the Jets a little bit. And I guess that brings me to my point. Is this a good move for the Jets? Well, I think it kind of depends on what the role is. Now, I have to admit, when this move was first announced, it was a few minutes before they announced the trade of Elijah Moore. I was very excited about the Hardman signing because, for one big main reason, is that Hardman, if he was brought in as the number 4 receiver, that meant the Jets were not going to go after Randall Cobb. And I do not want Randall Cobb on this team. And it's nothing against, I actually really liked Randall Cobb back in his Green Bay days early in his career. There were moments where I was really hoping the Jets would. There were a couple of times Cobb was a free agent that I wanted the Jets to get him. At this point, his career's over. It's over. The only reason you're bringing in Randall Cobb is because he's Aaron Rodgers' friend. So when the Jets got Hardman at first, it was before they traded Elijah Moore. I thought, okay, number 4 receiver, guy who has kind of a similar skill set to what Cobb used to be. There's no room for Cobb anymore. I love this move. Great move. Now we have a young guy who's actually fast, who actually can do the things Cobb used to be able to do. Great move. Then Elijah Moore gets traded. And the picture becomes a little bit less clear because, again, Hardman's a guy who's not even 700 yards with Mahomes. And you're telling me he's going to come to the Jets? And the Jets are going to be the team after Kansas City couldn't figure out how to make this guy work? The Jets are going to be the team that unlocks this guy and turns him into a star, turns him into a quality receiver? It's tough to believe. However, if he's a depth receiver, if he's your number 4 receiver, a backup, you need him to step into the lineup, a few games. You need him to play some special teams. You can get him the ball in space. Well, I like this move a lot then, because then essentially he becomes not the replacement for Elijah Moore, but the replacement for Braxton Berrios. And I think, any way you slice it, he's a better player than Berrios, and he adds different elements. He's a guy who has been, he did make the All, and I know Berrios made the All-Pro team as a kick returner in 2021, but I never really got the feeling that what Berrios did was sustainable, because Berrios was a guy who I never thought he read his blocks particularly well. And you even saw this year when the Jets tried to get him the ball in space. He's not a guy who really reads the blocks. He essentially just goes as fast as he can straight forward. And if the blocks happen to be there, then, he can make some noise. But other than that, if the blocks aren't there, he's not going to be able to read it or change directions to the extent you need. Whereas I think Hardman can do that a little bit better. And although again, no 700-yard season, some years where he put up okay-ish numbers, some years where he put up decent numbers. Is this deal outlandish? No, I don't think it is. Six again around. If everything goes right, he gets $6.5 million. I don't think that that's a particularly outlandish deal, especially for a team that is, again, if you're getting Aaron Rodgers. I say this every day, and I'll keep saying it because it's true. If you get Aaron Rodgers, you're going all in. So you want to make sure you have good, decent receiver depth. And as number 4 guy, as your first guy, kind of like your utility guy, your fourth receiver. Ideally, you want him to be able to play a little inside, play a little outside. I mean, I think Hardman, he's a little. I think he can do both at an okay level, and I think that his element, he brings an element of speed. He can be a deep threat. He's an inconsistent deep threat, but he can bring that to the table. So I think like for a number 4 receiver, this is kind of what you want. It's not what I want though from a top 3, because top 3 receiver starter, essentially going to play full time, except for when you go to 2 tight end sets. So for me, the question is Hardman the replacement for Elijah Moore, or is he the replacement for Braxton Berrios? If he's the replacement for Braxton Berrios, I think that you could argue this could be an excellent signing for the Jets. He's the replacement for Elijah Moore, then I think you're kind of going cheap at receiver, and I'm not sure that's what you want to do as you're acquiring Aaron Rodgers. So what else can we figure out about this Jets receiver situation? We're going to talk about that a little bit more. We'll explore one of the options the Jets could have to replace Moore. That's as we continue this Wednesday episode of the Locked On Jets podcast. This episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. I keep playing GM of the Jets on this show. I tell you what I think the Jets should do. You probably have your own thoughts. Well, this is your opportunity to show what you can do running a football team, because when you play Ultimate Football GM, you get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory, trying to build a historic dynasty. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, managing all the finances, including negotiating salaries and terms, navigating your franchise through free agency, the draft, injuries, player personnel issues, and all the ups and downs of a season. And this is all in a challenging and realistic game world, because Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. You can play on the go as you want to and when you want to. And Locked On Jets listeners get a free 100% boost to their franchise when using promo code LOCKEDON, all caps, in the game store. Again, that's Locked On in all caps, so make sure to check it out today. And to download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. Again, that's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM, start your dynasty today. This is the Locked On Jets podcast here on this Wednesday. We're talking about wide receiver for the New York Jets, an eventful Wednesday as the team trades Elijah Moore to Cleveland for a second-round pick. Now, the Jets did send a third-round pick with Moore, so it's not a straight deal where the Jets get a second-round pick. They had to give something up. They essentially traded a pick in Elijah Moore for a higher pick. And the Jets also bring in Mecole Hardman on a free agent contract. So what's left to do at wide receiver for the Jets? Well, the discussion has now turned toward Odell Beckham Jr., a guy who I've talked about a number of times on this show in recent weeks. And, I go back and forth on Beckham because there are a lot of reasons to not want him right now, including, he hasn't played in over a year. He has not played since, not the Super Bowl we just saw, but the last year's Super Bowl. So he has not really played since February of 2022 when he was with the Rams. He was having a really big game against the against the Cincinnati Bengals in a game the Rams eventually won, but he suffered a serious knee injury, missed the entire 2022 season. But I look at the options out there, and unless Arizona is going to trade DeAndre Hopkins to the Jets, which who knows? Maybe there's all sorts of rumors about that, and I would be intrigued by that, but unless that's going to happen, I'm not sure I see where the big time receiver is available out there. And Beckham is the type of guy I normally would be against because he's older. He's got some history, being kind of a difficult locker room guy. Normally the Jets, especially under Joe Douglas, they've been focused on a steadier build. But with Rodgers, you're kind of like, I'm still assuming the Jets are eventually going to figure this thing out to trade for Rodgers. But once you got Aaron Rodgers, as he approaches 40, he's 39 now, he'll be 40 during the season. You're essentially trying to microwave a contender. You're essentially trying to build a contender from overnight. And that means that, you don't have the luxury of waiting around. And the last time we saw Beckham on a field, he was pretty decent. I mean, he's not the guy he was with the Giants in the early days of his career, but he was a guy who was helping the Rams. And I think, when you have one of these older type teams, these gambles are a little bit easier to take because you'll probably have more stability in the locker room. And plus, I mean, again, the Jets now essentially, once you get Rodgers, you have a 1, maybe 2 year window to make this happen. So you essentially have to go all out. Hopkins to me would be, I would kind of prefer Hopkins if he's available, in part because, I mean, not that Hopkins has been the model of health in recent years, but I just think, I feel like he's probably playing at a higher level than Beckham, but I think the Jets, again, I don't think you can go into the 2023 season with Garrett Wilson as your number one and then have Lazard and Alan Lazard and Mecole Hardman as your other two starters, because you're one injury away from courting disaster if that's the case. Because Lazard is not a guy who should be a go-to guy. Hardman's not really a guy who should be counted on as either a go-to guy or a second option. You got to add more. And I think the buzz is that the Jets are in on Beckham. I've seen at least one report that the Jets are really going after Beckham hard, and we know that because he was on the list Aaron Rodgers gave the Jets, list of players Aaron Rodgers wants. And apparently Rodgers and Beckham are close, so we'll keep our eyes on Odell Beckham. And I guess that goes back to what I was saying in the last segment. Was the signing of Mecole Hardman a good one? Well, I think it's a very good one if he's the number 4 receiver. I think it's less good if he's the number 3 receiver, because the difference between number 3 and number 4 is the difference between being a starter and a depth player. If you get Beckham, then Hardman gets bumped to the number 4 spot. He plays special teams. You work him. You figure out ways to work him the ball in space. You try and utilize his speed that way. You get him the ball on handoffs, on jet sweeps, on screens, and he plays his role. And if there's an injury, then he can step up, and then you have maybe more of a cushion. Whereas if you stick Hardman as your number 3 receiver, you're really putting yourself in peril if anything happens to Garrett Wilson. And if there's a better option out there, I'm intrigued, because Odell Beckham Jr. is not typically the type of guy I want. I just think, given the other options out there, given where the Jets are, he's a guy to keep an eye on, a guy who I think could conceivably make some degree of sense. I guess we're talking calculated gambles here, and it's a big gamble, but Jets are in a spot where they probably have to take a few gambles. Anyway, I'd love to hear what you think, but that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you're listening on a podcast source, please a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, please a big thumbs up. These things help the podcast out and help other Jets fans find Locked On Jets. Have a great Wednesday, everybody, and send in your mailbag questions. Unless there's another breaking news story tomorrow, we actually will get to our weekly mailbag. Take care until then.